guys? It's Phil the MMA Dude back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 82, here with my always brilliant co-host, the Fight Geek. Fight Geek, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing excellent, Phil. Happy to be back. Got lots of exciting fights to talk about. How are you?
Doing very well. Do we ever? Here's what's on tap tonight, folks. We've got a ton to talk about. First, jumping into that UFC Fight Island Sandhagen versus Moraes recap and review. What a night of fights that was. After that, moving on to our UFC Fight Island 6 Korean Zombie versus Ortega preview and picks. Fight Geek, I'm so excited for that main event. We'll get to that. I've never been more excited for a main event this year, but okay, we'll get there. After that, it's outside the UFC. We're going to really quickly cover the Lomachenko versus Lopez boxing match that is not to be missed this weekend. It's free on ESPN. And then finally, we're going to touch on Bellator. They've got a huge event with Chris Cyborg defending her featherweight belt. And then after that, finally, of course, we're going to jump to my favorite section of all, listener questions and more. But
ooh, it's a mouthful there, huh? Lots to get up.
There was so much. Did you hear me in the tone? I almost forgot the listener questions just because there was so much to say.
Blasphemy, Phil.
Blasphemy. Seriously, it's my favorite section, so true blasphemy. But, Fikey, okay, let me start off the episode with this question.
Clear your throat. Here we go.
Okay. Sandhagen versus Moraes. Obviously, we saw Sandhagen get an incredibly impressive second-round TKO via spinning heel kick, I believe, was what knocked Moraes down, and he got the finish from there. And Sandhagen said that he wants the winner of Jan versus Sterling. But Jan versus Sterling is still not made. What do you think is the holdup? Is there a holdup? Is this much ado about nothing? Or is Dana waiting and trying to give this to Cejudo or Dillashaw rather than Aljamain Sterling?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had the answer to what the holdup is. I think it's clear that Aljo's that fight. The majority of, MMA Twitter and all the fight fans I know want that fight, think that's the fight. So not sure what the holdup there is. The only reasonable explanation would be if they're negotiating behind the scenes with Henry or TJ. So I guess that remains to be seen. With that said, I don't really think, Corey should be next. He was finished one fight previous to this. So while this was an incredible performance, obviously showed that he belongs among the elite, I do still think that he could be in line for a true number one contender fight to be next, to kind of line up the time, the schedule, etc. But I think coming off a stoppage loss in his previous fight kind of hurts his case a little bit.
And to his credit, he said as much after, right? He said, I want the winner of
he's
Sterling.
An intelligent kid. You can hear when he talks, I think he understands, what's reasonable and what's not. I'm sure if they came to him and offered him a title shot, he would say yes, because any fighter would say yes. But truly, I think he should be in a number one contender fight. And then he puts together another solid performance. That stoppage loss is 2 big wins in the past, and he could be in line for who's next. So, and that could potentially be an Aljo rematch, which could be an interesting storyline as well.
Absolutely. And you said that Sandhagen may have to have, one more number one contender fight. Who do you see that being against? Is that going to be Frankie Edgar? Is that going to be
I don't really see Frankie as that guy.
TJ Dillashaw? I
mean, TJ Dillashaw makes the most sense, I would think, as far as the time frame and ranking-wise. So I could see that happening, but, like you said, there's a lot of unknowns here. They may give TJ a title shot coming back, so that really kind of makes the field a little murkier, because I think that, Aljo is the clear number one contender. And then of the active fighters, I think Sandhagen is the clear number 2, correct?
Yep, I agree with
that. And then it gets very murky from 3 on. So I'm not sure I have the answers. It'll be interesting to see.
And really quickly, before we move on to covering the rest of the card really quick, just while we're on the main event here, What to make of Marlon Moraes? I'll tell you right now, I went to UFC 238 live in Chicago. I saw Henry Cejudo overcome the adversity of Marlon whooping his ass in that first round, and then, obviously Henry Cejudo got the stop in the third. But I thought this was going to be the Moraes era back at that time. I kept saying, oh, Magic era is about to start, and I'll own that loss. But what is the story with Marlon Moraes? My theory here, Fight Geek, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, are you just have to survive the first round storm, and then he's gassed and he's out on his feet, and you can go to work.
See, I mean, there may be a little bit there, but I don't think it's that simple. I mean, the guy's 23-7-1, so it's not like he's been exposed. The guys he's lost to, are the very best in the game. He technically beat Jose Aldo, if you watch that fight, so that's not even a loss on his
I scored that for Marlon.
Yeah, and he was looking actually fairly strong late in that fight. So I think that's a little overstated. Is he a big, powerful bantamweight who carries a lot of muscle? Clearly. Is he an explosive striker where if you drag him into the later rounds, he's going to fade a little bit? I think that's a fair assumption. But to say he's anything other than elite is still really hard for me at this point because, he just did so well versus Jose Aldo. And Corey Sandhagen has, it's hard to kind of pinpoint what he has, but he has that it factor. He really has a unique game. He seems to have gotten in MMA super young to where his game is very adaptive and it's very smooth. He seems to learn and add new tricks each time we see him.
Yep. Yeah.
His length and his footwork gave Marlon all kinds of problems. So I didn't necessarily see Marlon's gas tank as the problem as much as the tactics and tricks that Sandhagen had were just better than Marlon's. Marlon was a little more predictable, I would say, and Corey was hitting him with all kinds of techniques, switching stances. I think he broke his orbital with a high head kick.
Yeah, I thought Marlon came on strong and early, though. I thought he came on very strong.
He did, but he didn't land anything overly significant because Corey was able to settle in, get his distance, and never really took a huge shot. I mean, obviously, in the first couple minutes of a fight, the first round, you're going to get, some solid shots for the most part from a fresh fighter.
No, absolutely. Okay, so we better keep it moving. We got so much to cover tonight, but we are going to now go back to the bottom of the card, and we are going to look at a prelim fight that many are calling quite possibly the best knockout, not just in UFC history, Fight Geek, but MMA history. Joaquin Buckley's ridiculous jump-spinning back kick knockout of Impa Kasanganay. What are your thoughts on where that ranks, top 5, top 3 all time?
It's so hard. We have such as fans, we want to put everything on a list and everything's got to be number one. So it's really hard to kind of place this. Obviously, as far as the athleticism and the execution, I think it's clearly one of the best knockouts of all time. As far as the stakes and kind of the significance in the sport, I think it's knocked down a little. So I'm not sure it's the greatest knockout of all time, but that doesn't mean that it's any less knockout. I mean, when I was watching it live, I literally jumped out of my seat, was screaming so loud that everybody in the house came out to the living room to see what I was screaming about. So if it's that good of a knockout, I mean, does it really need to be placed somewhere on a list? I mean, it was an amazing knockout.
Well, it's a little more fun, Fight Geek. I mean, let your hair down, as Ariel Helwani would say. Let your hair down.
Number one knockout of all time. That's like saying, what's the best song of all time? It's literally an impossible thing to quantify. There's so many of them. I mean,
you must be so much fun at parties, Fight Geek.
Is it more significantly significant to history than Conor knocking out Aldo or Holly knocking out Ronda or Nunes knocking out Cyborg? No. But is it one of the more athletic, unpredictable knockouts we've ever seen, a la Barbosa, Edom, Yair with the back elbow to Korean Zombie?
I mean, Masvidal Askren, obviously.
Yeah, Masvidal, Askren. So there's two separate types of great knockouts. There's the kind that are significant for the history of the sport, and then there's the technical application of them.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. So wait,
Anderson Silva absolutely clowning and knocking out Forrest Griffin, a former light heavyweight champion of the world, is still one of the greatest knockouts of all time, no matter how you look at it.
Okay, fair enough.
So it's hard for me. Then you have the Ngannou Overeem knockout.
I still say Buckley Kasanganai is top 3 knockouts all time for me. Top 3.
As much as I loved it and it was awesome, and I don't want to say anything negative about it, I just don't think it's on that level. But
name 3 better.
Enough.
Name 3 better.
I just named a list of like 8 of them that I thought were better. But
all right. Okay.
Overeem, I think the Overeem versus Ngannou knockout is better just from sheer violence standpoint. I think the Terry Edom Barbosa one is a little more explosive if you watch it back. So, but again, I don't want to knock this thing down because this is unbelievable, once in a lifetime knockout. So it was unbelievable. I just think we're a little bit of victims of the moment, you know?
Yeah, okay, so real quick, and we got to keep this moving. Joaquin Buckley, I think that he deserves a ranked opponent, and I've got one in mind. I want your thoughts.
He just lost his previous fight. Just because he got a nice knockout, he gets a ranked opponent?
Are you kidding me? He stopped undefeated Impa. Impa was undefeated.
Yeah.
By the way, wait a second.
I'm not sure he deserves a ranked opponent off that, but that's just me.
Wait a second. You're being real hard on him, man. You're saying because he lost to Kevin Holland, bro? Kevin Holland is real good.
One fighter, just because his one win is spectacular doesn't necessarily mean he gets to jump up into the top 15, because there's guys who have been working for years.
Had Impa won, he would have gotten a ranked opponent. No.
And to be honest with you, I think he was probably losing that fight up until that point.
No, I don't agree there at all.
That was a back and forth fight, and he was getting.
It was back and forth, but Impa was rocked a bunch. I don't agree with you on that.
All right, well, maybe I have to watch that back. But I thought that Buckley was getting hit with heavy shots early on too, big shots.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyways, no, I wouldn't give him a ranked opponent.
Okay, I thought Brad Tavares versus Buckley sounded fun to me.
Oh, it sounds fun. Sure, let's do that. It's hard for me to believe Brad Tavares is still ranked.
He's ranked 12. He's not even 15, 14, or 13.
When was his last fight?
Was it against, like, Stylebender? That can't be right.
And wasn't he knocked out? So, I don't know. Strange.
He didn't get knocked out by Stylebender. No. He had another fight. But, yeah, I can't believe he's still 12, right?
Yeah, that makes sense, though. I could see a fight like that.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, you just destroyed my opinion, and then you agreed with it. All right.
Well, he came back and...
Okay, all right.
Prove me wrong with a name like Brad Tavares. I thought you were going to say like Kelvin Gastelum.
No. Okay, so moving on to the main card, had some great fights. Ilya Topuria proved us both wrong, beating Yusuf Zalal.
And this was a fight where I felt like there was no loser. I still feel like Yusuf Zalal fought well in spurts. Obviously had unbelievable submission defense.
Submission defense was out of this world.
That was one of the more technical and interesting fights with not a ton of action that I've watched in a while. I really enjoyed both of those guys. I'm really high on both of those guys. I think both of them are going to be, top 15 type guys.
I definitely agree. I think that they were both impressive. Zalal showed a ton of heart, and Ilya was just too good. So congratulations to Ilya.
And it was one of those things where, he was just able to implement his game plan a little bit more. I feel like, Yusuf could maybe make some adjustments, come back, keep his range a little more, and keep it on the feet and maybe have more success. So that might even be a fight I wouldn't mind seeing again down the road someday.
Yeah, one day. Okay, moving on. Tom Aspinall with the awesome TKO ground and pound at 1 minute and 35 seconds of round number 1 against Frenchman Alan Baudot.
Yeah, this looked like such an easy pick. I mean, my picks were brutal this week. Horrible. Probably the worst weekend of picks I've made. So this one stung too. Aspinall looked really good.
I believe I got this right and you got this wrong, right?
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
Ooh, I think I had a bit of a run this weekend.
Aspinall, I think that's the best he's looked, in my opinion, physically. He looked like he was in great shape.
Yeah. All I kept thinking was, look, there were a lot of Englishmen and fighters from the UK that looked great. Tom was one of them. Another one was Tom Breeze. Tom Aspinall and Tom Breeze, both from the UK.
Tom Breeze looks like a monster at that weight class, man. He's big.
So my only question here, Fikey, I kept seeing all these great Englishmen, and I'm thinking, what's Leon Edwards' excuse?
I don't know. Maybe he's the entitled rich kid.
Yeah, might be. But okay, so any thoughts on Tom? Do you think he deserves a ranked opponent next, or not necessarily? I think it's a little early, maybe.
Yeah, it's a little early, maybe. You got anybody in mind? Which Tom are we talking about here?
Oh, Aspinall. Tom Aspinall. I'm thinking, okay, what about this? This is a little out there here, but let's play matchmaker a little creative.
205, correct?
This is heavyweight, 265. What about Marcin Tybura, who beat Ben Rothwell by unanimous decision?
Yeah, but Marcin Tybura is basically a ranked guy.
He's 15.
Yeah, well.
So. Yeah,
I don't know about that.
Okay.
How about Tom Aspinall versus Greg Hardy?
Okay. I mean, look, I like that. I always kind of like seeing what's going on with Greg's level. I feel like he's not tested enough, so I mean, I like that idea.
Alexander Volkov. What do you mean he's not tested enough?
That's the only. Okay, you're absolutely right. And then he hasn't been tested since.
But he's beaten some other guys that haven't looked horrible.
No, that's why I said I'm interested. I'm always interested.
All right.
In
anyways,
fights.
I'm not sticking up for Greg Hardy.
Good move. Okay, so Dricus du Plessis from South Africa gets the TKO via left hook, 322 into round number 1 against Marcus
Kind of
Perez.
a strange knockout. It looked like
he was losing the fight, right?
Yeah, he was losing the fight. Perez has a tendency to get a little wild in his fights, and he seemed to be really focused early on and was hitting the leg kicks and really kind of imposing his will. And then, of course, he's kind of got a little squirrely through that, what was it, like a spinning reverse elbow, got off balance, and it was almost just a lucky shot from Duplessis, who just landed on was it the back of the head or the temple?
I believe so.
Yeah, kind of like, just a bang-bang kind of freak exchange. So, sucks for Perez, who I picked. But I do think that Duplessis, is it Duplessis?
I think so.
Yeah, so I think he showed that obviously he could weather a little bit of a storm. He's clearly a powerful striker, has a lot of experience. So, interesting guy, but I feel like Perez really let him off the hook there.
Yeah, and Duplessis made a strange comment at the end of the fight, I believe, about how he's going to be the first true African champ. That got a lot of pushback on social media.
Yeah, what do you think he meant by that? You think as far as like birth certificates?
No, I think he honestly didn't mean it as badly as it came out. I think he meant.
But what does that mean, though? Does that mean he's like the one saying that he's actually from that region?
Because he's born and raised in South Africa. He's inferring that Francis Ngannou, Kamaru Usman, obviously Francis isn't champ, but like, Usman and Adesanya are not true Africans.
So, I mean, I don't know, I guess.
I mean, if
that's his way to
that's
get
just
on
something
the map,
not to say, though. That's just something probably best left unsaid.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a little cringy, but
he definitely got a ton of criticism.
I've heard, yeah, he did. I saw that he got a lot of criticism. To me, again, those post-fight press conferences, you can only take so much stock in.
I think that's honestly a good point. I mean, I think that's a fair point, right? I wouldn't want to be quoted after I had a fight. That's for
right,
sure.
And not you're breathing heavy and your eyes are watering. You're just getting punched.
You got adrenaline running through like crazy.
Yeah, and then he won his UFC debut. So I mean,
again, I'm not excusing it. I mean, again, I don't think he left it. I think he was innocent. I don't really know, but again, yeah, I think you do bring up a good point. We've talked about it before on the show that people immediately after fights, there's a lot of adrenaline.
But did I find that less cringe than Colby after he won the other night? Yeah, I did.
Oh, less cringe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
cringe.
Obviously.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well, definitely.
So it's like, yeah, was it a little out of bounds? Sure, but it was.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, that looked like a charity project compared to what Colby Covington said.
Right. Yeah. So okay, let's keep it.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. So we talked about Marcin Tybura beating Ben Rothwell via unanimous decision.
Did you find any enjoyment in that fight at all?
Not really. Did you?
I mean, it just, when you fight Ben Rothwell, it just kind of looks like fighting a bear. It's kind of interesting in a way, but It was just, I don't know. After a while, he just kept throwing the same thing and just eating enormous shots. It's like when you're that big and slow, it's hard to get out of the way. Another pick that I missed, I'm still sour about.
And I don't want to brag, but I got Marcin right on that one again. I really had a little run on you this week. It doesn't rarely happen, so I got to take advantage. Okay, so moving on, because we've already covered the main event, but moving on, finally, Edson Barboza defeats Makwan Amirkhani via unanimous decision after 3 rounds, got an impressive knockdown. And I thought Edson...
Yeah, multiple knockdowns.
Multiple knockdowns, excuse me, multiple knockdowns. I thought Edson looked, really pretty good for... credit to Amirkhani for not getting finished.
Yeah, I thought Edson did look good. I do feel he's lost some pop on his strikes with the loss of weight, so he's more of a volume striker as opposed to kind of have that huge power that he generated in the past. So that'll be interesting to see as he goes along because he touched Amirkhani a lot and never really landed the huge power shots that we're used to from him. So I thought it was a great performance, but still kind of to be determined on where I feel like he slots into that division. Definitely top 15.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally agree. I think it'll be really fun. I think that featherweight's heating up, bantamweight's heating up. They're both going to get really, really fun really quick, and I can't wait, and I'm looking forward to seeing more from Edson. But okay, so are we now ready to move on to our preview and picks for UFC Fight Night, Ortega versus Korean Zombie?
Yes.
All right. Let's go. Let's do it. So pumped for this fight night, particularly this main event. I think I told you this, Fight Geek. As you know, and as most people know, listen to this podcast, I first discovered MMA actually through World Extreme Cage Fighting and Uriah Faber, and who was one of the, maybe the second fighter that I became a fan of because of WEC? The Korean Zombie. So, I go really far back with Chan Sung Jung, and it has been a pleasure to watch his re-rise. Brian Ortega, obviously 14-1. Toughness speaks for itself. Record speaks for itself. These two have bad blood. I can't wait. But before we jump into it, let's go really, really quickly to the main card picks. And whoa, there's a lot of main card picks because this is one of the biggest main cards I've ever seen. Let's start off with the undefeated Mateusz Gamrot, 17-0 versus Guram Kutaladze. Oh, Kutaladze. Jeez, these names are getting...
I'll let you tackle that one. I am actually going to go with Gamrot. Is there Gamrot?
I believe so. I believe it's Gamrot. Although it could be Gamro. But I actually am annoyed in that I'm going to agree. I'm going to take the 17-0 Mateusz Gamrot. I have seen a little of, and what little I've seen of him has been impressive. 17-0 for a reason. Okay, moving on. James Krause versus Claudio Silva. This is a fun fight. Tough fight, right?
Yep. Goodness, I could go either way here, but I'm going to take James Krause via split decision. I think it'll be a back and forth fight, be somewhat of a war. James Krause has a tendency to get dragged into wars, and I think his experience will shine through here.
Not a bad pick. I do have Claudio Silva winning this by third round stoppage, but this is a close fight, and guys, I would not recommend betting on this one. So moving along to the 12-3 Jonathan Martinez bantamweight bout versus 22-3 Thomas Almeida. And I am going to go with Thomas Almeida in his return. What about you?
Yep, I hate to be redundant, but I'm going to take Almeida here too. Almeida was a big star on the rise, took a couple setbacks, has been out for a while. Really looking for him to kind of reinvent himself and get back on the map. So I think this is a great opportunity for him, taking Almeida here as well.
All right, moving on to a light heavyweight bout between the number 14 ranked 11-1 Jimmy Crute versus Modestas Bukauskas, 11-2, and he's the number 38 light heavyweight in the world. Who you got?
Yeah, another fight that should be really tough. Both guys are solid, but I'm going to take Jimmy Crute. I think he's one of the better prospects in the division. Has been impressive up to this point. He's young, so I'm I expect him to keep progressing. And yeah, I've taken Jimmy Crute here.
I am also taking Crute, very unfortunately, by first round stoppage.
Just looking at my notes.
Yeah, right. You wish. Okay, then let me pick next. Okay, moving on to Jessica Andrade versus Caitlin Chukagian at 125 flyweight bout. This is going to be a really fun one, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting style matchup because Chukagian is such a distance kind of point style fighter, and Andrade is such a charging, get in your face type fighter. So it'll really be contrasting styles and to see who can implement their will. I'm going to take Jessica Andrade.
You know what? I was so tempted to take Andrade, and part of the reason was that Caitlin. I don't know if you've been seeing, but she's been talking the last few days to reporters about how she wants to start a family soon, and once she does start a family, that will be it for her. She wants to retire. She was even considering her last bout to be her final one, but she's taking it fight by fight. So that is not the kind of stuff that I like to hear from the number two.
So getting knocked out by Jessica Andrade would probably send her out the door?
That's correct. Against all of my better judgment, however, because this is MMA, I am still taking Caitlin Chukagian, who's longer than Andrade, who's a little bit more, in my opinion, technical than Andrade, and I think that she's going to pick her apart and get that unanimous decision.
I can't say that I completely disagree, but it will be interesting to watch. Two very different styles in that one.
Oh, yeah. Moving on to the co-main event. This is Ante Delija, 17-3 from Croatia, versus the Frenchman Cyril Gagné, 6-0, number 15 heavyweight worldwide. I've missed our friend Cyril Gagné.
Isn't it Cyril Gain?
I like to say Gagne. Is it Gain? Shit.
Yeah, I think it is Cyril Gain.
What took Cyril so long? He's not active enough.
I know it's French, but I mean, anyways.
Yeah, Gagne, like a bidet. Gagne, bidet. Wait, okay. A bidet is French, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm taking Gain here. Been super impressed with him. I think we've seen his power striking and his submission game already. One of the top prospects at that division. Expect him to show out here. I do expect it to be a tough fight early, but taking Gain.
Yeah, okay, look, I might not be able to pronounce his name, but this guy is for real, and I know how for real he is. Unfortunately, I have to agree with Fight Geek here. I'm taking Cyril Gagne, or Gain, if it's Gain. I'm starting to think it's Gain more and more by the second. And I've got him by submission in the first round.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Yeah. So moving on to the main event, Fight Geek. I feel like we've been waiting for this fight for 2 years, and I think maybe we have.
You have for sure.
I really have. It's the Korean Zombie versus Brian Ortega. I wrote on Twitter, I'm more pumped for this fight than I was for Whitaker Till. Definitely. I mean,
it's a better matchup for sure.
So pumped. Why don't you start? Who you got?
What's there not to love about the matchup? Obviously, Ortega, long layoff, 14-1, one of the best rising prospect stars in the game before Max put a Hall of Fame style beating on him. 2 years off, surgeries, kind of a reinvention, still super young, versus the Korean Zombie, who again, another guy who's come back, kind of risen. His star power's risen, and his last, 3 or 4 performances have been spectacular. So I think the fight is super intriguing. I think people are counting Ortega out a bit based on the layoff and the loss he took. I expect him to come in and be the absolute best version of himself. But with that said, I also expect the Korean Zombie to come in and be the absolute best version of himself, which he's shown previously in, I think, the last 4 fights off the top of my head. Seems like every time he comes in, he's 100% focused, 100% in shape, and executes his game plan to a T. And for that reason, I'm going to take the Korean Zombie via unanimous decision.
Oh, wow. You think Ortega's going to go 5 with this guy?
Well, Korean Zombie doesn't put the volume on people that Max Holloway did, and if you look, the volume...
Nobody's got the power.
He does have power, but I think Ortega showed you that he has the chin to not get KO'd, especially I think he's only 27 still, or 20. How
Yeah.
old is he?
No, he's young. He's around that age. He's in his 20s.
Yeah, so he's young enough, and he proved in the Max fight that he can take shots without getting knocked out. Obviously, I do think the Korean Zombie has a little more KO power than Max, but I don't think he'll put that kind of volume on him. I do think Ortega's defense will probably have been like the topic of discussion for the last 2 years after taking a beating like that. So I expect his defense to be 50% better than the Max fight, let's say. So with those two things taking into effect, I do think he'll be a much smarter, efficient, and defensive fighter than the last time we saw him. But I think offensively, Korean Zombie will still have a little too much for him.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm so excited about this fight because I feel very confident in what I'm about to say. My prediction is, but I look forward to seeing if I'm letting my bias get to me subconsciously, and then I can fall on my face next week and everyone can make fun of me, you included, of course. But I've got the Korean Zombie knocking out Ortega in the third round, and I think that's honestly being nice to Brian. I'll be happy.
I mean, if
I'll
that
be
happens,
impressed if he makes it to the
that
third.
would be a surefire title shot after that.
Dana said it's a surefire title shot for the winner no matter what. Now, I know Dana says some stuff that doesn't always happen, but...
Right. Yeah, I mean, that'll be interesting. That's pretty different than my pick. So.
And I'll just go one step further just while we're at it. The Korean Zombie is going to go fight Volkanovski, and he's going to beat him by unanimous decision. And he's going to become the champion. And I do believe this. That won't be an easy fight, but look, get ready for Korean Zombie to stop Ortega and then beat Volk by decision. You heard it here first.
We will see. To be determined.
All right. Okay. So with that, guys, we're going to take a really quick break, and then we'll be back with listener questions and more. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude letting you know that this episode of the Split Decision Podcast is brought to you by TotalAggressionClothing.com. Visit www.TotalAggressionClothing.com and use the promo code 46210 to receive a special Split Podcast discount on all Total Aggression hats, shirts, hoodies, and more. Again, that's www.TotalAggressionClothing.com with promo code 46210. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 82, here with my always brilliant co-host, the Fight Geek, and it is now time for my favorite section of all, Listener Questions!
Let's get into them.
Thank you. Okay, so this first question comes from my man, Zan Bando. Love Zan. And he writes, here's my question this week. With the success of Fight Island, do you think the UFC will continue to hold fights there even after the world goes back to normal? I'd argue yes. Hashtag AskSplitPod. Fight Geek, start us off.
No-brainer. The Fight Island will be a staple of the UFC moving forward.
Okay, yeah. First of all, I agree with that. Then, not to be dark, but my next question is, when is back to normal happening? Because whenever people, when is that going to happen? Because I'm not convinced at all that will be that things will be back to normal, even in 6 months. Not even a little convinced.
Places like Florida are letting 65,000 fans go to a Dolphins game. I think the UFC will eventually get back to Florida and have 10,000 people in them. So, it seems bleak.
Yeah, I mean,
technically the UFC could hold an event in Florida right now and pack the house.
I don't know if Mickey Mouse wants blood on their hands, though.
Well, if they're going to let 60,000 people go to a Dolphins game, I think they'd be plenty fine with a 10,000, 20,000 person UFC event.
Yeah, I mean, and with
my point
social
is,
distancing, maybe they can let less people into the stadium.
Back there anytime soon. I mean, we're heading back that way. So, but I think that Fight Island can be something that stays there with fans eventually. I don't think it, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh no, definitely.
Yeah, I just think it's too marketable for them to move away from. And the fact that they've actually held cards there previous to it being Fight Island, they've already visited there regularly in the past. So it just may be more frequent moving forward.
Oh, I totally agree. I think it's a no-brainer that Fight Island is going to become a part of the whole UFC
Yeah, it'll probably
thing.
be like once a quarter, every 3 months or 4 months or something.
Yep, I think that's very accurate. Okay, so I got a question actually specifically from a buddy Ruben. This is at BoxingFanatic99, and he said, "All right, Phil and Fight Geek, got a question for you. If each of you were to replace Dana right now, what would you do on your first day and in the future?" So kind of a general question, but I guess Fight Geek, let me start that off for you. You're Dana. You get the Dana job. Dana's just retired. What's the first move you're making day one? And then sort of longer term, is there anything else you're looking to change?
I mean, honestly, it sounds kind of strange, but if I would want to get Henry Cejudo to fight Peter Yan. That's what I would do.
Hey, fair. Okay.
I would
Nothing
force
wrong with that.
Henry Cejudo to fight Peter Yan to see who the real belt holder is in one of the greatest divisions in the world.
Okay, I like that. And then anything long term?
Long term.
And this could get like into a 30-minute thing, so.
Yeah, I would go more to like the open scoring format that we see in other organizations.
Oh, you're okay. You would go to open scoring.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to.
See, I would not
come
go to
around
open scoring.
open scoring.
I would not. There's dangers to open scoring, in my opinion.
Well, I get my 2 answers, Phil. Now
no, you don't. No. Guys, delete this, Fight Geek. Delete this from. You do not get your answers.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
So I'm gonna go with those.
Okay. All right. Very fair. Yeah. In the spirit of making fights on day one, what would I do? Oh my God, I had a great one in my head. And did you just ruin it for me? Fight Geek? I think that Cejudo versus Yan would be very fun. What I would probably make is I would definitely pull Khabib aside and try to talk him in to, if he beats Justin Gaethje, changing plans and having his final fight go up for that welterweight strap. I know how much Khabib's legacy means to him. I think that obviously he's already very close to being the greatest lightweight of all time. Everyone knows that. But I believe he wants to be viewed as the greatest of all time altogether. And in my opinion, he needs to get a second belt at 170 to do that. And I think he's perfectly capable of getting damn close, even if he fails, if not being very capable of doing it. So I would try to convince him to try.
Fair enough. And long term?
Long term, I would really the only difference I think I would make is I would be more open, and this could be controversial here, but I would be open to occasional tournaments a la Bellator. I like the tournament format sometimes, especially I think that there's times for tournaments and there's times not to do tournaments. For example, a time to do a tournament right now would be, in my opinion, with the crazy bantamweight division. It's a little nuts.
And going back to our last question, something like Fight Island is the perfect vessel to hold a tournament.
Yep, exactly.
Be like, could you imagine selling a Fight Island bantamweight tournament where the guys are going to go live in a bubble for 4 months and it's going to be, or 1 month, 4 weeks, and it's a Tuesday night contender style tournament?
Okay, that's honestly more ambitious than I was planning. I was kind of thinking the Bellator route where it's like...
Sorry, I got excited.
No, but, to be honest, look, I don't dislike that idea. That's like that's like some kind of tough on steroids, like the Ultimate Fighter on steroids, Fight Island Championship Tournament. I don't dislike that.
The ratings would be absurd.
They definitely would be. Okay, so moving on to our next question. This is from my good friend Sam Brown. He says, Hey Phil, got a question for the podcast. Since I always miss the slot due to being in England, just wondering what you guys reckon Sandhagen's chances would be if he decided to move up to 145. I can't see him sticking around at bantamweight for too long due to his size, so I think he'll be a 145er within 2 to 3 years. Great question, Sam. Thank you for that, bro. Fight Geek,
Yeah, I mean, with Corey's frame, it's not like he carries much muscle mass at all. And the fact that, how old is he at this point? Sorry, I don't know off the top of my head. I'm not sure that he's going to get a whole lot bigger. So, moving to 145 seems.
He's 28. Like he's 28.
Yeah, so he's 28. So he's not going to get a lot bigger. He's pretty much full grown. So I would expect him to be comfortable at 135 based on what we've seen. He's never really struggled with weight. And I think he would lose some of his major advantages that he has at 135 at 145. A, he's long and lanky and has a reach advantage at 135. And B, we've seen how he does with super powerful athletic wrestlers like Aljo. 145 is going to have guys like that are bigger and stronger, which is going to put him at more of a disadvantage. So I think Sandhagen is a true 135er, and I'd be surprised if he leaves unless, he loses 3 in a row or something and needs to reinvent himself.
Yep. I've got to agree there. Sam, got to agree with Fight Geek there. I think that a move up to 145 would be ill-advised for Corey. Again, like Fight Geek said, he's got a lot of weapons with his length at bantamweight, and I think that 45 has really got some serious killers that are. Frankly, I know that Corey's a tall bantamweight, but there's much bigger and harder hitting punchers at 145. I wouldn't recommend Sandhagen to do that. I think he's in the right weight class as is at bantamweight.
Cool.
All right, cool. So moving on to, this is such a great question. This great question from King Richard, that's at @V_King Richard_V. He says, Phil the MMA dude, Fight Geek, who is on each of y'all's Mount Rushmore of most important UFC fighters? Important in the sense that they were crucial to the growth and health of MMA as a sport. And this was a really shockingly tough one for me to put together. But,
Yeah, I'll just go ahead first.
All right,
think on it because I shared mine. I obviously posted a while back about my Mount Rushmore of MMA, which included Fedor, GSP, Anderson Silva, and Royce Gracie. And if you want to know all my particular reasons, it's in the thread. You can go to my page. But for the UFC, I would basically swap out, at this point, Fedor for Ronda Rousey for the UFC, specifically because Ronda's success really did open the door for the female fighters, which have become a staple of the UFC in a way that really has never happened in any other sports. As an avid sports fan, when I watch female fighters, I watch them through an equal lens as male fighters. You judge their will and their technique and things like that.
So you're saying you're not a sexist douchebag. That's good.
No, I mean, I think in other sports it's easier to be like, in basketball, girls use a smaller ball and discredit them in certain ways.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Where when you see the female fighter, she's putting it on the line 100% the same way as any male fighter does. I think it really elevates it. And then without Ronda Rousey opening the door, we would have never got the Joanna Jędrzejczyks or the Weili Zhangs or the Rose Namajunases or the Valentina Shevchenkos and Amanda Nunes, is these unbelievable fighters that are Hall of Fame worthy fighters and characters that the sport is just better to have. So with that said, Ronda Rousey would have to slot in there for my UFC Mount Rushmore.
Okay, I like it. All right, so I have 2 of your 4 on mine, so I won't spend too much time talking about them. And those 2 are GSP and Anderson Silva. I think
obvious reasons.
Their names speak for themselves.
I think people forget that during GSP's prime and during those formative years, so after the Randy Couture, Tito Ortiz, Chuck Liddell generation came the GSP generation. He was the biggest draw in the sport. People consider him and look back at him as he's a boring fighter, but I do believe for a long time GSP was the biggest earner and had the biggest pay-per-view numbers in the sport. I mean, he really was a lightning rod of interest in a transitional era. Anderson Silva, as far as the highlights and the dominant, figure, I think a lot of people would associate him to the greatest of all time within the UFC. So he goes on there too. So
okay, now I think my next two answers are going to be a little bit more controversial, especially my fourth. But here's my third: Royce Gracie. That's right, Royce Gracie. Look, won 3 out of the first 4 open weight UFC tournaments. Proved that size does not matter. Was quite literally beating guys, 3 times his weight.
Right. And the whole concept of the UFC is designed around the idea that jiu-jitsu can beat other styles. So it's
and that the smaller man can beat the larger man.
It's so ingrained into what the sport has become, the success of Royce Gracie and Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, that it's impossible to leave that out, in my opinion.
Great. Okay. Wow. I'm glad I didn't get much heat for that. Now the fourth one, I'm expecting more heat for, but you'll have to hear me out. It's Conor McGregor. It is.
Boom!
Yeah. Look, it's not popular. It's not. I know, guys. McGregor's not cool anymore. I certainly understand that. But when you consider what he did in terms of just bringing the sport more mainstream, I mean, he literally brought in tens of millions of new fans. That's probably being conservative, actually, on it. Not to mention, I think what's really important, not just forget the Jose Aldo knockout. That was all impressive. The Diaz stuff. But the double champ, really quick, he did solidify becoming a double champ first. He was the first one to do it simultaneously, and he made it look easy.
Without fighting one guy in the lightweight division, he was gifted a title shot because he was the biggest star.
This isn't about whether or not where McGregor stands. I obviously don't really like Conor McGregor right now. In fact, I don't like him at all. It's impossible to. But I'm just trying to be non-biased and talk about how big his impact on the sport was.
Who's making
if you want to
more
deny
money?
that he impacted the sport, that's a different thing. We can do that little game.
That's what I'm saying.
You're saying what was the question?
I think his impact is overstated because I feel like the Conor era helped his team and people involved in him. I'm not sure his era necessarily has elevated fighter pay or something.
He made
like
everyone. Well, no, of course it didn't elevate fighter pay, except for him. But it. For example, I'll tell you one thing it did. It made it normalized wanting to become a double champ, right? Get 2 belts.
It normalized skipping the line and cherry picking your opponents.
Yeah, I don't really know what you're arguing here. Like you're arguing,
I would just say that
you're arguing that I'm like for that. Like yes,
I would say that
cherry
he's been more
pick
detrimental to the sport than anything.
Sorry?
I said I would argue that he's been more detrimental to the sport.
Well, look, that's not a crazy take, but I think you're missing my point here, man. McGregor had an incredibly positive impact on the sport at the time of his rise. Is he having a positive impact on the sport now? Of course not. He's humiliating the sport by the day.
But his long-term impact as a Mount Rushmore fighter, you think his long-term impact from his legacy and his influence is bigger than Ronda Rousey, who has spawned a whole generation of female fighters who have become champions in the UFC where she began?
Well, I will say this. Despite all of McGregor's horrible behavior that Lord knows I am certainly not defending for 1 second, he still has many, many die-hard loyal fans.
No, I understand.
Does Ronda Rousey have a single fan in all the universe left?
We're not saying who's most popular. We're saying who's done the most for the sport. And I think you can
say
and
Ronda lost once, cried about it, came back a year later and quit.
As much for the sport as Conor McGregor ever has.
I mean, okay, all right. We disagree here. Again, it's a little bit of a moot argument. I feel like
I know.
You're taking this as like me saying I love Conor McGregor, which if anyone follows me,
I just can't
probably
believe
chuckling
you went
there. But
surprising. But no, fair enough. I get the argument. I just think that
you don't think what he did styling on Eddie Alvarez, who was the heavy. I mean, everyone thought that would be a very close fight.
That's a great performance, but what is his impact moving forward? Ronda Rousey's impact moving forward.
He normalized getting the double champ status. That's what it is.
Well, again, I don't think that's a Mount Rushmore accomplishment, personally.
Yeah, I mean, He also brought millions of new eyes to the sport, right? I mean, would the ESPN deal have happened had it not been for McGregor's existence? Okay, I'm starting to. So I'm sick of defending McGregor. What are you doing? You're making me defend McGregor. I hate that. I feel sick.
And I'm defending Rousey. Imagine that.
Okay, all right. This is getting very unpleasant on all kinds of levels. Okay, moving on. Let's definitely move on from that.
Just say DC a couple times. He'd definitely be on there, right?
I mean, I'd on my biased little list.
You got one up, or should I?
Yeah, no, I got one. Okay, this is from my good friend Juice from the Fighting With Myself podcast. Great podcast. Check it out, guys. He's my man. He says, what does the 145 division look like if Brian Ortega beats Korean Zombie? Conversely, what will it look like if Korean Zombie wins? Okay, so first of all, I'll start this off. If Korean Zombie wins, which I highly expect him to, then it's going to be Korean Zombie versus Volk for the belt, and Volk better come ready, because that's going to be a very, very serious encounter that he best not underestimate. I favor Korean Zombie closely in the Volkanovski fight. If Ortega wins, though, I think he has to kind of fight Max again before he gets a title shot, or am I wrong?
I mean, I don't personally need to see that fight again, but it would make a lot of sense. Obviously, you hate when I answer questions like this, but it depends on what Brian Ortega looks like. Again, he's been out for 2 years. He's had hand surgery. He took a brutal beating.
You're right, I do hate when you answer questions like this.
Well, because he could come back and be a completely reinvented fighter that we've never seen before, and you're asking me to make an assumption based on that. I can't. I don't know where he'll be. If he comes out and knocks the Korean Zombie out or chokes him out in 30 seconds, everybody's going to be like, oh my God, Brian Ortega next. Yeah, he's the best.
What has he been training besides flexibility with Halle Berry? Much respect, by the way, for that. But, I mean, what's he been training?
If that's on the table, what else would you train?
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
So with that being
won
said,
that one.
yes, I agree with you. Obviously, if the Korean Zombie wins, he's definitely going to get that Volkanovski fight. But depending on how Ortega wins, I don't think it's crazy that he would get a title shot, based on the fact that Volkanovski may find it more intriguing to fight Ortega than, someone like Max for a third time.
How fun would, by the way, and this is now letting my mind go crazy, but let's say Ortega beats Zombie, Ortega somehow beats Volk. Again, I don't see either happening, but let's just say, could you see Holloway coming?
Holding the belt versus Max?
How mad would Max be in that rematch? Would be so fire.
Yeah, that'd have some crazy storylines with the champion being the guy who's taken the brutal loss previously.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
I guess it could kind of be like Bisping Henderson, but they were a little older.
Yeah, a little bit like that though. I hear you. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Now that's honestly, there's so much fun in really most of the divisions, but really a ton at bantamweight and featherweight.
I mean, we're not even talking about Max and Qatar.
Yeah,
and guys
there's
like
so
that.
much fun.
Yeah,
so
it's
much
insane.
fun.
Yair is still in that division.
Zabit is supposedly still in there.
Yeah, I mean, that division is insane.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, coming up next is a question from Split Decision Podcast OG Eduardo. That's at Landa Crew. Love this guy. He says, currently, who's the most obscure fighter you're a huge fan of? Hashtag AskSplitPod. Fight Geek, why don't you start us off with this tricky little question here?
I'm going to say Brendan Allen.
Okay. And why, may I ask why that's your answer?
Because I like the way he fights. He's 24 years old. He's aggressive. He's got good potential. I've enjoyed his performances up to this point. He's 3-0 in the UFC. He's beat Kevin Holland and Tom Breeze, two very impressive guys he stopped. And he actually just is a little obscure considering he's 15-3 with wins over Breeze and Holland.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I don't dislike that. I'm going to go with a...
it's got to be obscure, Phil. Can't be a ranked fighter.
I'm going to go with a weird one here. I'm going to go with Dusko Tudorovic, the 10-0 Serbian fighter who beat Daquan Townsend last weekend from TKO ground and pound in that second round. I think that he's exciting, undefeated, and I think he's got a lot of promise.
I think both of our answers were A1.
All right. Okay, nothing like patting ourselves on the back. I like it. So, moving on. This question comes from my man at Yugi MMA. Love Yugi, one of my closest friends on Twitter. Give him a follow, guys. He's great. And he says, ready to have DJ back yet? Question mark. Fight Geek, are we missing Demetrius Johnson?
I could take him or leave him. I haven't really missed him, to be honest.
I mean, I feel the same way. I was just more afraid to say that.
I would love to see him back, but it's not like I've one Saturday been sitting at the UFC watching it and been like, you know what, I really miss DJ. I'd be lying if I said that.
Couldn't agree more. I will say this, I'd like to see him back maybe for the sole reason that I would be so curious to see what would happen
it would be
against Figueiredo.
Come back after he's aged a little bit in a new era, for sure. I'm not saying I wouldn't be interested. I'm just saying I have not really yearned for him back in any way.
Yeah, Yugi, honestly, bro, I've got to agree with Fight Geek here. I think that flyweight, I think in a way the best thing that could have happened to flyweight was DJ losing. I know I sound like a hater.
I think that one is way more interesting with there. So
one is definitely more interesting with him there. It's just that he was so dominant at flyweight. It was very boring. He didn't want to move up. It actually reminds me a lot of John Jones' situation with light heavyweight, where he vacates the belt, says he's moving up, says, never mind, just kidding, I want to fight the middleweight kid. Is there a middleweight I can fight? Give me that middleweight, please. But DJ obviously didn't call out someone smaller than him like Jones did after saying he was moving up. But, it reminds me of the same type of domination that Jones had at light heavyweight, DJ's domination in the UFC flyweight division, and it just got really stale.
Agreed.
Yeah, so would love to see him come back, though, at the very least.
We just lost 3 listeners for the DJ slander.
I don't think there's even 3 DJ listeners for the show. I mean, are there? I was trying to make a joke about the dwindling amount of DJ fans. Okay, this isn't going well, the DJ jokes. Thanks, guys. I'll be here all week. Okay.
All right, pick a new one. We got plenty.
All right. Coming up next, guys. Next question is from Cyrus King. That's at Cyrus King. He's got a podcast as well, Combat Corner. Love that guy. I call him the godfather of MMA Twitter. And he says, as of right now, which division is the best in the UFC? Featherweight, lightweight, bantamweight, and welterweight are all filled with killers. Curious y'all's thoughts. And my first thought, Cyrus, is that you didn't even name featherweight. Oh, yeah, he did. He named it first. Never mind. He did name all the top ones.
There's one answer to this question. If you include Cejudo and TJ Dillashaw, bantamweight by landslide. If you don't include them, it's lightweight slightly.
What about featherweight? That's a little disrespectful to how awesome featherweight's getting.
Well, featherweight has, just hear me out. So featherweight 8, 9, and 10 is Jeremy Stevens, Arnold Allen, and Dan Ige. All good fighters. But if you go to bantamweight, it's Jimmy Rivera, Rafael Assunção, and Dominic Cruz. That's a better threesome, correct?
Not by much, bro.
Yes, Jimmy Rivera, Rafael Assunção, and Dominic Cruz
is a better trio
than Jeremy Stevens, Arnold Allen, and Dan Ige. That's not negotiable. And then
in resume, of course, because of Cruz, sure, yeah.
And then you go to lightweight, and 8, 9, and 10 is Diego Fajeda, Al Iaquinta, and Kevin Lee. I would still give the slight advantage to bantamweight based on the strength of the top 10, 1 through 10, and they basically have 2 guys who are sitting out right now that would be in that top 10, strengthening it. So basically the top 12 of bantamweight is in title contention, basically.
How fun would a tournament be? A bantamweight?
Yeah, it's bantamweight right now. I just really feel like bantamweight by the numbers is the best division in the UFC.
Yeah, also, it's worth noting Cyrus named welterweight. Cyrus, I like welterweight as well, but here's the problem. They're all a bunch of drama queens. They are drama queens.
And they don't have as much elite depth. It falls off.
Like,
once you get to Mike Chiesa, Rafael Dos Anjos, and Neil Magny, they're
Oh,
great
yeah,
fighters.
yeah. It's falling off at
But
that. Yep.
none of those guys are going to win a title. Damian Maya's not going to contend for a title. So the 7 through 10 guys are not Tyron Woodley's 6th in that division.
You've got a very, I will say this about welterweight in their defense. You've got you've got a very elite top 5 in Usman,
no doubt.
Covington, Burns, Edwards, Masvidal.
Right, but they actually have Stephen Thompson ranked number 5, who I would
5 contenders, so he's number 6. Yeah, him too.
Weak number 5 if you think about it.
You think he's a weak 5?
I don't think he's a championship contending 5, where if you look in the other 2 divisions, it's Frankie Edgar and Yair Rodriguez at 5. I think actually he's pretty strong compared to Frankie and Yair.
Well, now, just while we're having the conversation for fun now my eyes wandering to middleweight, where honestly it doesn't look as bad as you'd think. Adesanya, obviously.
Yes, it does.
Whitaker, Costa, Cannonier, Jack, Yoel Romero, yes. Darren Till, Derek Brunson, Kelvin Gastelum.
So, for argument's sake, you can't even pay attention to really the top 5 because they're going to be a push. So you really got to pay attention.
What do you mean? Wait, what do you mean you can't pay attention to the top 5?
Because 1, 2, 3 are all going to be comparable. They're the elite guys in the division. So you really have to weigh like the back end of the top 10 to see which division has the better depth. Darren Till, Derek Brunson, Kelvin Gastelum, Chris Weidman, and Uriah Hall is horrible depth at the end of the top 5.
You think Gastelum, Weidman, and Hall's worse than Chiesa, Dos Anjos, Magny? I don't agree.
100%. Chris Weidman's on his last leg. Uriah Hall is 3-4 in the last 5 years.
Gastelum almost beat Izzy, the champ.
Who did? Yeah, Gastelum almost beat Izzy. He had a great performance, but he's limited. He's lost to numerous guys, including Chris Weidman, who I think that's his only win in the last 10 years, is Gastelum. Derek Brunson gets knocked out by every elite fighter he faces.
Hey, he's looking a little better.
I know. I'm just being harsh to prove my point. Darren Till needs to win a lot more at 185 before anybody's going to consider him an elite 185er. That guy has done more off reputation than anybody in the UFC.
Yeah. Okay. Very fair.
Darren Till still living off that Cowboy Cerrone knockout at 170 when Cowboy Cerrone's been knocked out like 8 times since then.
Harsh, and I disagree. I know it's very popular and very hipster to say Darren Till has no talent and he's just popular.
No. I never said he has no talent. I'm saying his resume.
He almost beat Whitaker.
His resume is Swiss cheese, man.
He almost beat Whitaker.
Almost doesn't matter at anything.
I'm aware. Okay. Look, I think Darren Till is.
I think Darren Till still possesses elite potential, but his resume has holes in it everywhere.
Yeah, he has to fix a bit of his game, in my opinion.
To consider him an elite fighter,
he's a great striker. He's a great striker. Sometimes he fights a little.
He should have lost the Wonder Boy fight, so his last 6 fights would have been like 1-5 or something.
I feel like I don't know if I scored the Wonder Boy fight for him, but
I scored a fight for Wonder Boy.
I think he's gun shy from the Masvidal incident.
All I'm saying is for a guy to have that kind of reputation, when you go look at what he's actually done, it's not that impressive.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I know it's the popular thing to shit on Darren Till all the time.
No, I think I like Darren Till. I just think that, he really hangs his hat on a couple victories, a decision on Gastelum and a knockout of Cowboy. Those aren't like elite world beater wins.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So back to my point. Bantamweight's the best division. I can argue that all day.
Yeah, absolutely. So this next question comes from G-Spot MMA. Love G-Spot MMA. Love G. She's from the Shots Fired podcast. Great stuff that they do over there. G, what up? See, she's got a great question. I can't like spell today. I don't know, or talk. Oh my God. Since Tatiana Suarez is being dropped from the rankings for inactivity, who should be cut from the UFC next?
So I got a little confused here. She says Tatiana Suarez is dropped from the rankings was she cut also?
I didn't think that she was cut. I thought that she was asking that follow-up question.
Right, okay. So what I would say is that, Tatiana Suarez has bin out for what? Over a year now. So dropping her from the rankings seems justifiable. I'm not sure if she's been cut or not. I don't think
she has been. I don't think she has been.
And then who should be cut from the UFC next based on inactivity? I mean, that's a hard question.
Leon Edwards. Sorry.
No, well, you're not going to cut a top 3 guy. I mean, someone
Leon
like
hasn't fought in a year and a half.
Santiago Ponzinibbio hasn't fought in 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, whether he's
and then no one wants to talk about the fact that Gregor Gillespie got knocked out by Kevin Lee and just went up and said, you know what, I think I've had enough of this sport. I surrender. Here's the white flag?
For inactivity, it's hard to remember the people who are super inactive because you hasn't seen them for a while.
Remember Gregor Gillespie was a person who lived?
Yes, but he only has 1 loss. I don't think they're going to cut him after,
I don't think he's shown any interest in coming back.
I don't know.
I might be being a bit of a troll here. I haven't followed it closely. I'm probably being a troll. But I know he's been silent as a mouse.
Inactivity. I mean, minus Ponzinibbio. I mean, or actually, how about Gunnar Nelson? Is he still on the roster?
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's a great point because I was actually talking about Gunnar Nelson the other day, and someone asked me if he's still on the roster. Yeah, Gunnar Nelson. Let's go with that answer.
Gunnar Nelson is my pick.
Yeah, let's go with that answer.
But I feel like the UFC would hold on to Tatiana Suarez as long as possible, just because she had so much promise. But if they are, if they know her outlook physically, maybe they would get rid of her.
Man, that would be so sad, wouldn't it?
I mean, again, I haven't. I mean, I'd love to see her fight, but it's not like, she's been gone as longer than she was here, I think.
Yeah, all right, we got to keep it moving. We're on track to have the longest episode yet, if I'm being honest. We better keep it moving. Okay, this is from Jacob Powers. That's at Jacob Powers 2. He says, #AskSplitPod. Who should Corey Sandhagen fight next, and what do you think his ceiling is right now? So we touched on this very briefly earlier, saying that, Corey likely deserves the winner of Jan versus Sterling or a number 1 title contenders fight. And TJ Dillashaw, I think we said made a lot of sense. Is there anyone else that you wanted to sort of mention last minute here?
After kind of looking at the rankings, I'll drop 2 names that I think make sense. Frankie Edgar, and if you just want to put a name in there, Dominic Cruz. Other than that, I don't really see what else makes sense.
Hard to disagree there.
Jose Aldo, maybe?
I mean, if you're going to consider Dominic Cruz, you got to consider Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo looked better in his title fight than Dominic Cruz did.
Yeah, I think Dominic Cruz versus Corey Sandhagen actually is intriguing, but Dom's at 10, so it'd be interesting to see if Corey would go back that far. But for a former dominant champion like Cruz, he probably would, in my opinion.
I don't really understand, to be honest, why Dominic Cruz hasn't retired. I really thought he would retire after the loss to Cejudo.
I've been following him. It looks like he's training pretty hard. So
yeah, just wouldn't have taken a lot of confidence off that Cejudo loss. Cejudo toyed with him, just toyed with him. So
that's true.
Yeah, but
But then again, Cejudo's was arguably the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world that night.
That's true. That's also very true. So
that doesn't mean that Cruz is some scrub that he got stopped by someone who was in his absolute prime at his peak.
Yeah. So quickly answering the second part of Jacob's question, can Corey Sandhagen become champ?
I think he showed you this weekend he certainly can on his best night.
Okay. Once again, Feige kind of taking that riding the fence route. I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to take a risk and say no, he'll never be champ. But I think it's a risky pick. But I'm saying no, he'll never be champ.
Not even interim?
Oh, well, that doesn't count. Of course he could be an interim champ.
Okay.
All
right.
Okay. This next question's from Glitch. That's at MMA Port. Love Glitch. He says, how well is Ortega going to do Saturday night after all that time off? So we covered this a little bit, obviously, in our picks. But, to answer your question, in short, I think relatively poorly, Glitch. Feige disagrees with me. and thinks
Yeah, I think
he's
he'll
going to
look
last
good.
5
Like
rounds.
I said, I think he'll be more strategic. His defense will be much better. He's going to be. I imagine he'll be bigger and stronger than he was 2 years ago. All he's been doing is training. So, yeah, I expect the best version of him for sure.
All right. This question is from Jalen Ware, Split Podcast OG. That's at strive2b_ great. He says, since Ortega has been so inactive and last fight was a lopsided title shot loss to Max years ago, if he beats the zombie, should he have to go through Max again? Hashtag #AskSplitPod. And you know what? I may have seen this question earlier, Jalen, and then by accident answered it earlier. So I apologize for that.
Subconsciously.
I think it was subconscious because I said, I think maybe he has to go through Max again.
I'm going to say no, actually.
Okay, but I'm saying yes, so we disagree here.
What do you mean? You think Ortega should get the title shot, or you say he should go through Max? I think
he's been inactive for 2 years.
What about if Ortega wins, making him and Zabit fight?
Okay. Oh, well, what about Yair and Zabit? They're still supposed to fight. What's going on with that? What the hell happened?
I thought that fight got canceled, and I haven't heard anything about that since.
I just don't know what. It's very weird. I
think
there's always drama with Yair, and there's always drama with Zabit, and that's in truth why I really dislike both fighters. There's always so much
Yair
drama.
Rodriguez fan, but I will agree with you. There's always some drama surrounding him.
And Zabit's the biggest drama queen of them all. It's always something with him.
I think Ortega versus Zabit is the more relevant fight for a number one contender fight. I don't think Yair's that high yet. So I think Ortega, if he wins versus Zabit, is the fight.
I mean, honestly, I agree with you. But we know that Zabit is not taking that fight unless they promise him it's only 3 rounds. Preferably 2.
Yeah, Zabit, what are you doing, man? Fight somebody in a 5-round
fight. Fight a 5-round fight, Zabit, so I can stop hating you so much. I don't like hating you, okay? I don't like it. It's not fun. Just fight 5 rounds. I hate you so much for not doing it. Just fight 5 rounds. Okay.
All right.
Wow, that felt great. That's like going to my therapist.
It's like scream therapy on the podcast.
That's kind of what I use this for. Let's be real. Okay, moving on to my man, Dean Dog, at DeanDog3. He said, I missed a few episodes, so if this has been asked, just ignore it. What if Justin actually beats Khabib? Not likely, but humor me. Does anyone still want to see Tony versus Khabib besides me, even if it's not for a belt? Hashtag #AskSplitPod. I say yes.
Yeah, we do, but let's not kid ourselves. Justin and Khabib have the same agent. If Justin beats Khabib, I'm sure they're going to run it back.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a boring but reasonable answer.
One thing I will give Ali credit for is let him actually not getting in the way of these two fighting, because I think we've seen in the past, like with Tony and Conor, that management really didn't want them to fight, which caused problems. At least he's letting them fight.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue his hands got a little tied, right?
Well, no doubt, but at that point, he just let it go forward, and that's what we need to see. We need to see the best fight the best. I do think Justin
it's not the first time. It's like Cejudo Moraes. He was repping both.
No, I know, exactly.
Yeah, but you're right.
So yeah, I still want to see the Tony versus Khabib fight, no matter what the stakes are, just for history. But I do feel like if Justin actually beats Khabib, because like you said, it's not likely, nobody would be expecting it, Khabib would turn around and want that rematch, and I think that would be easy to line up. Yeah,
and going to do something very unusual here, just very quickly, and just wish our brother Dean prayers and best wishes for something horrible and private that he went through very recently that I'm not going to bring up here. But all my prayers and Fight Geek's prayers are with you, Dean, and your family. You've been so loyal to this show, and we are thinking about you during this difficult time. So thank you, and all the best getting through this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay. Moving on now to something a little lighter. Moving on now to Oscar Silva. This is at WWE UFC _fan. He says, what would you expect from a matchup between Chan Sung Jung and Max Holloway? Well, Oscar, I would expect a hell of a lot of fun. That's what I would expect.
Yeah, I'd expect
what a fight that would be.
A lot of striking.
What a fight.
Yeah, it would be a lot of volume.
What a fight.
Yeah,
that's like
awesome.
almost, is that like
that's
the dream
one of those
fight?
dream fights, you know?
Yeah. I'll be honest, you know that I'm a, obviously this diehard Korean Zombie fan. That's a matchup I don't like for Zombie. That's one of those rare ones I don't like.
Max has the ability to really push that pressure.
Yeah, and you know that Max has, we both know Max has one of like the most legendary chins ever. So
yeah, for sure. He's going to be around.
And if Korean Zombie, I feel like Korean Zombie is going to try to take him out of there early, and if Max is still around, he's just going to drown the kid.
Yeah, it would be an interesting one, no doubt about it.
Yep. That'd be a great fight, Oscar. So great question there. Then this question is from Grandpa Gamer 420 #AskSplitPod. Prime Jose Aldo versus Prime McGregor, and Prime Aldo versus Prime Jan. Who wins these fights? So I'll tell you.
Honestly,
we've seen the first fight. No,
we didn't. Prime Aldo.
No one likes to talk about the fact that Jose Aldo was in his peak prime until the second he lost to McGregor.
I agree.
How
with you,
convenient.
But you can't say that was his absolute prime. You just cannot. The guy had.
He was in his absolute prime and then he lost, so now he's washed up? Come on.
No, he's not washed up, but that wasn't his prime. That was clearly towards the end of a legendary title run in multiple organizations. Even though he was only like 30 at the time, the guy was about probably closer to 40 in fight years. He had defended the title multiple times against guys,
Well, a ton of times. Like 8.
Well, that's what I'm saying. A ton of times. A similar title run to that of GSP's, and GSP retired from the stress.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can't really put that version of Aldo and say that was prime Aldo. I would say the prime Aldo is the one that almost, crippled Uriah Faber with leg kicks. That was his prime.
That was a long time ago.
But he's like John Jones in the fact that he started so early and he got elite so quickly that his prime was closer to 23 than it was to 30, in my opinion.
Okay. No, I hear you. Honestly,
some fighters don't necessarily hit their prime the same time,
Yeah. Look, there's a lot of fairness to that. I'm not going to say there's not. I personally do think Aldo was still in his prime in that McGregor fight, personally. But I know we disagree there. That's fine. And then Prime Aldo versus Prime Peter Yan, who wins. That, I think, is easy. That's Jose Aldo.
Yeah, he would have been much bigger. And then Prime Jose Aldo, when he used to implement his kicks and how quick and fast and athletic he was a serious problem. Even the Conor McGregor version that he knocked out was not nearly as fast twitch or nearly as explosive as he was earlier in his run. Like when you saw him knock out, Chad Mendez with the knee or Cub
That was a great fight.
Early. Stuff like that where
the
he was
Korean
very
Zombie
fast.
fight was great.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly, the guy who beat Korean Zombie was more of a prime Aldo than the one that McGregor knocked out. Not taking anything away from McGregor because that's one of the most important knockouts in history and really where Conor McGregor gets the majority of his credibility, in my opinion.
Yeah, and by the way, quick side note, guys, if you want to go back, if you're a little new to the UFC and you want to go back and watch some classic Jose Aldo, really recommend his title defenses in the UFC against first the Korean Zombie and second against Chad Mendez. Those were great fights.
And his WEC fights with Mike Brown and Uriah Faber are unbelievable.
I'm a Faber fan, so I'm a little bit slower to recommend those as they didn't end well.
It was a legendary night in MMA. Probably one of the most brutal displays of leg kicks in history.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Faber couldn't walk at the end. I think.
And what that does is it showed Faber's toughness as much as it showed how elite Jose Aldo was.
Oh yeah. Faber's shown a lot of toughness, and I went through a lot of losses with him, like the 2 Mike Brown fights in WEC. In the rematch, I believe he broke his hand in the very beginning. I still remember that.
Those were fun fights. Mike Brown was a beast.
All right, absolutely. So Moving on to MMA Addict 9. Love this guy. He says, with Rodolfo Vieira entering the middleweight division, do you see him as a genuine threat / contender? If so, how do you see him versus Israel Adesanya playing out should they ever fight? Whoa. That went from 0 to 100.
It's such a good question. I like this one a lot. I think Rodolfo Vieira entering the middleweight division is interesting. I think he definitely could be a genuine threat and a contender. Super athletic guy with unbelievable jiu-jitsu background. I mean, how would he match up with Israel Adesanya right now? Or if they should fight is really hard to say. You know, Israel's arguably a top 3 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, and Rodolfo Vieira still seems to be making that transition from jiu-jitsu to MMA. So I wouldn't really love his chances, but I do see him with a little bit of getting a couple solid matchups under his belt and kind of rounding into middleweight shape. I could definitely see him as a genuine threat or a contender for sure.
Yeah, no, I think it's very interesting. You know,
he could be very Ian Heinisch.
Ian Heinisch.
Yeah, something like that with better jiu-jitsu, maybe a little threatening.
Brad Tavares, who's number 12. Tavares has got to fight and protect that number 12 spot.
I would favor Rodolfo Vieira versus Brad Tavares today.
Okay, and then who would you favor in Vieira versus number 11 Edmund Shabazian?
I mean, after Edmund Shabazian's last performance, I would favor Rodolfo Vieira.
I agree. I think that's a little harsh on poor Edmund.
But Edmund,
Derek is improving. Derek Brunson is improving.
No, he is improving, but Vieira has a truly elite ability with his jiu-jitsu, which other fighters don't necessarily have. So versus a young fighter like Shabazian, all he's got to do is get it to the mat, and that's a wrap.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it sounds like I believe he's a top 15 middleweight already. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. How do I see? I think he would get picked apart by Israel Adesanya. I know that might be a boring
100%.
answer. But yeah, I don't see him being
I think a fight
there.
with him and Chris Weidman is super interesting.
Would that be too quick of a jump? Maybe just make that.
Yeah, and I don't think Weidman would take a
Weidman
fight
would
like
never
that.
take it.
But based on their skill sets, that would be a very interesting fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so do you have the voice questions pulled up?
I do. Weren't expecting so much Rodolfo Vieira love today, were you?
I wasn't, but I like it. I like the Rodolfo Vieira love.
All right, cool. So I've got a couple questions here. I'm queuing them up. This one is from Jim Asoon.
Jim Asoon.
Attempt number 5. What's going on, you bunch of fucking casuals? Phil, White Geek. We both doing well. My question for you this week, Marlon Moraes. What the fuck is up with him, man? What's next for him now? I don't know. Guy had a loss, but I thought he was gonna win. I knew Corey was good, but I just thought, Marlon's been fucking top of the food chain for a minute, you know what I mean? So what's next for him, man? It better be Sterling and Yan for the fucking title, I'll tell you that right now. We better not hear no fucking TJ or Henry or fucking even Santa. You better not get any fucking chatter about it either, you know what I mean? It needs to be fucking Sterling Yan for the title. And Corey can fight the winner of that. Eminem? I don't know, man. That's my question for y'all. Hashtag AskSplitPod. Hashtag it's always 420, motherfuckers. Peace.
Yeah, Uncle Jim, the man, the myth, the legend. One of my favorite guys that I've met on MMA Twitter.
Great question.
He said fifth try. Yo, 5th try. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate
Persistence
that.
pays.
It really does. Thank you, sir. Marlon Moraes, I'm telling you, Fight Geek, I know you don't agree, but this guy's a one-pump chump. He's got to get it down in the first, or he's done.
Here's what I'm gonna
it's
say.
over. The girl's like, what? That's it, Marlon? You're so muscular. He's like, this is all I got.
After discussing Jose Aldo in depth, I think now would be the perfect time for that Moraes-Aldo rematch based on the controversy of the first one. And then both coming
5
off
rounds.
losses.
5. Make it 5.
Make it a 5-round main event, sure. And then after that, let's say Marlon loses. Marlon Moraes might be the most elite gatekeeper in the history of MMA.
That's an interesting take. Okay.
So, but I'm not ready to go there yet. I'm just saying I think that Aldo rematch right now, based on the controversy and them both coming off losses, makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. Okay. I actually I like that one. Okay. All right. So what do you got? What do you got next for us?
I got another one from Kairos.
Kairos.
What's going on, guys? I've been thinking about this a lot. There's different fighters from every single era and different fans coming to the sport from different time periods, too. You know, you have fans from the McGregor era, the Ronda Rousey era, the John Jones, Anderson Silva. You got people from the Shamrock, the Fedor era, the Pride Never Dies era, the Dream, you know, all the many eras of MMA. What do you think is your favorite era personally between the two of you? You guys don't have to agree on it, but what for you personally is? Because for me, it's towards the end of the WEC era where Dominic Cruz and Uriah Faber started their beef, and then it transitioned into the UFC. That's like, I love that era of, because there were so many guys who were just coming into the UFC and making a name for themselves through the WEC, through Strikeforce, through other promotions like that. And I just love that time period. What about you guys, though?
Kairos.
Unbelievable question.
Love
Great
it.
question.
Love it. And by the way, he's also on the Shots Fired podcast with G. He's great on that. He's the man. We've spoken about him before. But yeah, go ahead with your answer.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite era, you know, just based on kind of my infatuation with the sport and it being super new to me and kind of absorbing it, would have been probably around UFC 40-ish. You know, Tito Ortiz, Ken Shamrock, Chuck Liddell, Vitor Belfort, Randy Couture, that 205-pound division in that era really captured my imagination. As most of you know, I was a big Tito Ortiz fan when I got into the sport. He kind of was one of the guys I followed early on. His rivalry with Chuck Liddell was unbelievable. Chuck Liddell's career, and then kind of how that transformed into the 205-pound division, which eventually gave us John Jones. I would say that era, probably UFC 34 to UFC 100, somewhere in there.
All right, very fair. So I've got two quick answers. The first one is that I would really kind of agree with Kairos that time period when Strikeforce got purchased by the UFC and we were able to see all those Strikeforce champions come and you know, kind of test themselves against the best fighters in the world with the UFC. You know, also Pride. Of course, the Pride fighters showed up around the exact same time. You know, fighters like Tyron Woodley from Strikeforce. You know, fighters like Daniel Cormier, who I had recently become a huge fan of as I watched him, you know, work his way through the heavyweight Grand Prix of Strikeforce and win that. So I was then pumped for him. I believe Amanda Nunes came from Strikeforce as well.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, so
so did Jorge Masvidal.
Masvidal did.
Derek Brunson, DC, Ronda
Woodley.
Rousey.
I think I mentioned Woodley. I don't know if I mentioned Woodley. A ton.
Yeah, Woodley. I mean, Nick Diaz was in the UFC first, but he went to Strikeforce and then came back.
Yep, absolutely. So that's one of them. And then my second one would be, you know, back when I started Kairos, when I got, you know, hooked on this, which was back in Faber as champ, WEC days. I believe he beat Dominic Cruz, and then in the first fight, and that, which is crazy to think about now, because obviously that trilogy didn't go his way. But then he fought Mike Brown and then lost twice. And I remember that rematch with Mike Brown being particularly, you know, it felt huge at the time. And I even had a few friends over. You know, we were truly like, you know, little kids then. They're like, what the hell is this? I didn't even fully understand it. But I remember the whole crowd going, Faber, Faber, Faber. And he broke his hand in the first round, and he was able to tough his way through it to a decision loss. He'd gotten finished in the first fight, but his pride wouldn't let him against Mike Brown in the second. I'll always hate Mike Brown forever for doing that to Faber, but that was just some great stuff.
Great era, no doubt.
Yep.
All right. And one more question, is from Smokey J.
Smokey J, what up?
Hey there, Split Decision Podcast. The Fight Geek and Phil the MMA Dude. It's fucking Smokey J here from Australia. I've got a pretty big fight fucking coming up this weekend. I'm excited as fuck about it, and I know you guys are as well. My question this week is, I was watching a bit of YouTube the other day, and I come across this video of this dude called Rener Gracie, which is Brian Ortega's coach. And he flew over to fucking South Korea to do a bit of a fucking session. Who showed up to that session? None other than the Korean Zombie. Those guys had, it was a bit of a fucking muck around, but they were going hard, and Rener ended up fucking getting the Zombie in a couple of different triangles, making Zombie tap. So my question for you guys is fucking who does that benefit? Seeing fucking Ortega's coach tap out the Korean Zombie, does that benefit fucking Brian Ortega, or does that benefit the Korean Zombie having been shown those moves already? That's all, guys. I'll fucking enjoy the fights. Bye.
Now that is a great question.
I love Smokey J.
That's such a good question. And to be honest with you, I think it would have to favor Brian Ortega. The application of the submissions are different. Obviously, Rener Gracie is his own type of jiu-jitsu genius.
Correct. Correct.
Ortega is a genius in that realm as well. But Rener Gracie is like a scientist of jiu-jitsu. So him being able to get, a Korean Zombie in a seminar, to tap a couple times is probably good for the intel for him to take back to Brian and give him some things to look for, but Brian's still going to have to go in there and execute it. And, each man is going to be different in the application of those moves. So I'm not sure that, I guess what I'm saying is Rener can't do it for him, but the knowledge of what Korean Zombie has fallen for in the past may give them just a little extra intel.
I think that's fair. I could also argue the other way, by the way, that who knows? Maybe Korean Zombie was letting himself maybe he wasn't going quite 100% and was just trying to see what they had planned. I mean, he's not that stupid. I mean, he must have surely thought.
He's not going to show all his cards.
Right.
Brian Ortega's coach.
Right, exactly.
Or maybe he was tapping quick to give them a false impression that he was in trouble when he really wasn't. I mean, there could be a lot of gamesmanship there, but... And
Korean Zombie is quite the submissions, specialist. Right. He submitted Dustin Poirier.
But, I mean, Rener Gracie's an expert.
Right, so. Well, of course, but Brian Ortega isn't his coach.
Right, exactly. But, I mean, I think that when you look at Korean Zombie and Rener Gracie, probably two of the most honorable guys within the game of MMA, I don't suspect any foul play on either side. I think, Rener travels around the world. He does these with whoever comes.
Is Rener the one that says all the really weird Nazi stuff? I don't want to get
No,
one of them
not.
Does.
We won't get into that. Rener, I believe, is the one who heads up the Gracie Academy, the self-defense school and stuff like that.
One of them is absolutely insane. I don't know which one it is, though.
The fact that you don't know is incriminating. So,
what?
We'll just end on that. That you don't even know which Gracie you're speaking of.
Well, yeah, because they had a family of 5 million.
And you should know at least the most 10 important.
How many Gracies are there? 50,000? They could run a country. They could invade the United States.
There's like 8 of them that you should know by face and name.
Oh my God! Look at this hipster stuff. All right. Okay, guys, thanks so much. All right, take it away, Fight Geek. I've had enough of you.
All right, guys. As usual, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, Stitcher, and more. I'm at the Fight Geek MMA. He's at Phil, the MMA Dude. We're at Split_podcast. It's 4 words. The Split Decision Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you next week. Peace.